Two
Day
There.
will
be
And
nah.
Today there will be Anna.
I can change my
We're using that
syllable.
one. No, we're using that one. That's the opening. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Muprov Musings. This is episode 10. I'm one of your hosts, Hal Munger, and joining me now on the line is your other host, Julian Bernardo.
you get the shtick. It's me. I'm back, and I'm always back. But there's somebody who is not back, but is here in some sense. Another guest who falls into the wonderful category of people that Hal and I have done improv with in the past. I will let her introduce herself. Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. I am also a member of Sims. So improvised with Helen and Julia in the past. I'm really excited to be here. I think I was thinking about how long I've been improvising. It's coming up on 2 years, but I still feel like I'm always learning new stuff. So it's exciting. I will say, something you need to know about my background. I learned like the kind of improv I learned is long form improv. So short form is actually kind of alien to me. I haven't tried that much of it. So this will be an interesting episode.
Yeah, and I think more than anyone else, you have been really raised in the environment of the weird new stuff that we have been doing. I think you're the first person to truly be like raised in that environment where that was the first improv they were encountering, and because of that, you kind of swim in it in a way that it's like natural, which is kind of awesome. I don't know if you would put forward anyone else, Julian, as the first person.
Yeah, I don't know. I think certainly Anna, you are one of the new bloods in terms of your improv heritage and DNA.
Mm-hmm. Because Anna, have you? The other thing is you're super in like. Have you haven't taken 103 or 104 yet, right?
No, yeah, that's how about it. Like I learned improv via something called Lit. So it was just like this workshop that Sims members were teaching to anyone who wanted to do it. So I haven't done any like formal class or anything. I haven't really like playing the games or any of those things. I sort of picked up on the side. I did some short form for like a mid-core show for Sims,
but you did jump right away into 15 hours a week of new play practice.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But Julian, what are we going to be talking about today?
Today we are going to be talking about narrative in a bit of a more general sense. So if you have been listening to the Hero's Journey series, we have been going through the different stages of the hero's journey, aka the different parts of an improvised hero's journey. But today we have a very special guest who we think has things to say about narrative, and we're gonna maybe brawl it out to some degree between the three of us. So narrative and like what makes a good narrative is obviously something that's super subjective. And also what makes a good improv narrative is really tough. So yeah, we're going to talk through our own opinions on that. And then we're also going to make a narrative.
Yeah, so this is an exercise that you can do. We often will, before we do a full run of our show, do something called like a surgical run, where we go through the show and in between every scene, we pause and kind of talk and debrief, mention if there was like a mistake or a listening error, or, like, oh, sometimes we redo scenes. We're not going to be doing that for you here today, but we will be doing something similar, which is like a kind of a Giga-story spine. So heading in the opposite direction, where we're going to be talking through like almost what happens in each scene. What's a normal story spine?
Yeah, you might be familiar with this. if you have ever, tried to do narrative, either through improv or I'm sure through other means, a story spine is a way of coming up with an improvised story. It has a few different like anchors that lead into it. So it starts with once upon a time, and then you fill in the blank. So you give some sort of scenario that starts out our story. This can be like fairy tale style essentially. Once upon a time there was a walrus named Jack or something like that. And there are successive things like this. I don't know, Hal, Anna, if you want to talk through the rest, or if we just want to blaze past this concept.
I think we should mention it just because I think this is a way that a lot of people first encounter narrative. And we're going to be kind of exploding it here, but yeah, one of the first things is an everyday. So we hit that on our worldview episode. What's the status quo in this place? And every day, Jack would wax his walrus mustache.
Yeah. And Anna, do you know the next one?
Yes. So there's this everyday sort of like what the world already is, and then there's until one day something changes.
The call to adventure, some may say.
Something.
If you're a hero on a journey. And then we have a long string of, and because of that, so because of whatever happened that one day, certain things happen, and then it's because of that. This would be the tests, allies, and enemies part of the hero's journey.
Then we hit on until finally, which I guess you could be your ordeal, but really it's kind of your like resolution. Oh, do you need an assist?
Yes, I think I lost the final phrase.
It is, and ever since that day.
And ever since that day. So you enter the new normal, what the world is now, after the hero has changed and learned.
Yeah, and this would be probably the return with the elixir.
Which we
and sometimes people like to tack on, and the moral of the story is, which I think is funny, depending on your context.
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the moral of the story is, don't hit your first worldview too hard. If you're in worldview mode. Anyway, but what the heck is that? I kind of hate that exercise. I feel like.
Why do you hate it?
I think it in some ways oversimplifies things a lot, and then especially. I don't like anything where you're telling me what to do, where you have to start every sentence, though, the limited options thing. Not every narrative fits that structure. I prefer to just go through and be like, okay, what happens? But I have a lot of opinions about what types of chains of events are acceptable as like, yeah, no, that's a reasonable thing, and which ones are not. So I kind of, rather than like, here is a thing you do every time, it's like when you are in a situation choosing what comes next, here is how you make that decision about what comes next.
Well, should we get into some of the opinions of it all? I think yes.
I think so too.
So yeah, well, pose something at least, Hal, that you think constitutes like what is a reasonable next step in a story, or just in general, what's your ideology here?
I think it's like obviously subjective. I think that like after any improv scene, there is like a collection, an infinitely large collection of like pretty good next scenes that could come about of like, yeah, this is a super reasonable thing that's developing the narrative. And then there's like a collection of things that I don't think are objectively wrong. But then I'm like, that's kind of out of nowhere, but like it'll work its way out. And then there are a collection of things that I think are objectively wrong, but maybe aren't like going to destroy the show of like, this conflicts with something that's already been said. This somehow, there's a concept from the game Go of like Tawari, which is this idea of if you played those two moves out of order, would you have played the first one? So anything that makes you kind of regret your previous scene or like makes your previous scene look like a weird thing is probably not a good move. And then there's the things of like, no, that is objectively wrong. There is no world in which that scene should come after that scene. And people hit the objectively wrong ones all the time in front of me. So,
Yeah. So you would say like a total, well, I won't say non sequitur, but something I guess that that downplays or like undercuts the previous scene would be like a wrong next choice.
Yeah, and at the beginning, most things are pretty reasonable, but like towards the end, like there are some moments where you're like, no, we're not going to cut away from like the climax of our story to go like see a cow in a field or whatever.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So your options limit as the game goes on.
I think I generally agree with that framework. Would you say that you do, Anna?
Yeah, I think there's definitely more freedom at the beginning to have scenes that come after each other that just don't seem to have anything to do with each other, or introduce totally new characters. And I think as long as the scene is dynamic and interesting, like it still could very feasibly be part of the story, the same story, right? And then just later on, maybe the threads intersect in interesting ways. And I think sometimes having that variety at the beginning can really make the story more interesting and more complex instead of following the same person step by step through one story, scene by scene.
Yeah. In a new play, we actually encourage people to make choices that were not in that cluster of like objectively right or like, you know, close to like reasonable steps. We were like at the beginning of the show, take some major swings in the, okay, I guess subjectively that could work. But Hero's Journey, we are kind of trying to be a little more predictable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things about Hero's Journey is that it is the journey of a hero, and the story should mainly serve to complement that, you know, even if it's not directly related or like it's not an event that's happening to the hero or something, it should serve towards their larger becoming of a hero.
But I also want to get into something I was saying in our warm up was activating some idea in Anna about. I was talking a lot about the perfect narrative, and you seem to disagree with that. So I wanted to get your.
I think it's good. I don't know. I guess I would just want to push you a little harder about what is the perfect. Because I think Hal's a person who has a very specific, just like compass, I think, for what they feel like is good in a story, or you know, maybe it's an instinct or something. So you can, I think you have a, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to like have a really strong sense of like when one scene happens, this doesn't really feel like the best scene that could happen. You know, there could be a more perfect scene. But I'm curious, like how you're making that decision in the moment of the story, you know, or just while you're creating the story. How can you know that you're making this perfect narrative? I guess I'm curious what the definition is, the standards that you're using.
Yeah. Well, I think one time we're from the exercise we ran today, like we're going back and forth. There were a lot of times where I was like, oh, well, instinctually, a lot of things I'm like, I don't think that's the right step. We can try walking down that path and I'll go along with it. But then every once in a while, there'll be one moment in the show where I'm like, I think we hit a moment where I was like, there is an objective right answer for what the next scene is. And then I made you like spend 10 minutes guessing what it was. And then eventually you got it and you're like, oh yeah, this is the objective.
I guessed it in 2 seconds.
In 2 seconds? You guessed it in 2 seconds? Okay, never mind. I remembered it wrong. But it is objectively right?
Yeah, I think maybe it'd be good to give context. I think what we're talking about is like, there's like the ordeal scene, like Hal and I were running this, and there was like, the protagonist was face to face with the villain. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, Hal was like, there's only one answer to what the villain's going to do right now. Like, there's only one correct answer about how the villain's going to react. And the answer, and I actually agree with Hal on this, was that the villain just smiles and has expected the protagonist to have done, like everything the protagonist had done up to that point was expected, or was exactly what the villain had wanted them to do. Is this what we're talking about, Hal?
Oh,
Or?
I couldn't remember what it was at all, but
Oh,
now it was coming back to me a little bit now.
That was what it was, I think. I think that's the moment when it's like, it's the ordeal, right? Like there's a sense that if you really want to push the hero in a certain way.
Yeah, this was a conversation we had like a year ago. There was something about the situation that had tied back to something earlier. I think there was some reason where something earlier had engendered that we had gotten to just the right place where the villain had something to do. So some access to big, like the hero had accidentally brought a key resource to them, I think was the thing.
Oh, okay.
You gotta have that spirit. But we're getting sidetracked. This is...
I think, I mean, in the end, it is like, I think the choices do narrow as you keep on going, down the story.
All right, I'll bite. I think I always believe that there are multiple things that you can do. Even I would be hard pressed to consider any sort of improv show where there is a certain point in which you've boxed yourself in into any one possibility.
Oh, okay, I'll throw out there's another concept from the game of Go. This is how I think about narrative a lot, just because it is a game that evolves through options or whatever. And there's a concept called Tsuji, which is kind of like the perfect move for a given situation. So it's not like the perfect move on the whole board, but it's like on a local situation, you get to a point where suddenly, oftentimes, there'll be these Go problems that you look at online where it's like, okay, what's the Tsuji here? Where you kind of study it for a while, and then you're like, oh, there's this objectively right weird move that's not the move you'd expect. And once you play it, you're like, and if something like blows your mind, like, then it was probably like a hidden objectively right thing. But the other moves are fine. They're just not objectively right.
But is there always one of these for any given like local situation?
No.
Then I would argue that in every improv scene there are and any show and any point in the show that there are going to be multiple of these hidden local maxima. And I'll also just throw this out there, which is just part of the subjectivity of like narrative and like art and improv in general, which is that the things that like feel like, whoa, that was really cool, are totally subjective. And like something that is to our artistic sensibilities might, it's all a function of like who is the audience, quote unquote. So maybe, yes, for you, Hal, every improv scene, maybe there is like just one or a few of these like, very logical next steps, but I don't think you can say anything that broad about it.
Actually, while Julian was talking, this made me think. I think one of the standards maybe that people use to think about what the perfect narrative or better narrative is the sense of satisfaction at the end, or a sense of like fulfillment. And so there's often a sense of like, there's many moving threads, of the story. And they, at least for something like the hero's journey, they usually tie up by the end. But I think the way in which they tie up and the way in which they intersect, that's, I think, maybe where some of the subjectivity comes in, where there are so many options you could do that could work here and that could tie up the threads. But maybe I think Hal probably has certain ideas about which subtle way of the threads tying together is the best, and which way is the most satisfying. I think that's part of it. And I think one of the ways I realize I improvise is not necessarily like in the moment thinking about what if I did this, what are all the ways the story could go? But oftentimes I'm like at a moment I have to make a decision, and instead I'm looking back at everything that has happened, and I'm thinking, what is something now that could happen that could bring several threads together, or go back on something that happened before. I think I'm very much like a loop person. I draw a lot on what happened before. And so that was actually really useful in a new play, whereas like whatever happened before wasn't super clear, but there was some sort of theme going, or some sort of characters. And so it was just very much like a sense of what has already happened and what could make sense here, what could, suddenly bring things together in a way that's satisfying.
Yeah.
You're funny.
Well, Well, whatever you're doing, I think it really works. We can have the debate live on whatever. But I think that Anna is one of the best people that I've interacted with at kind of narrative, in the sense, particularly of story spine and story spine exercises. Like when we've been talking, I've been in several practices. We taught Anna a word at a time story. And one other person for the first time, and she like nailed it. And we did an awesome, like one of the best ones I've ever done. And then we did story spine, was also like everything was really out of the box. And then I did this one practice where we did the thing we're going to do today, and it was awesome. And I just feel like Anna has a deep intuitive sense of how this works.
And let's get to the how of it all, right? Like, what do you think Anna is great at, or Anna, what do you think Hal is referring to with these high praises?
I'm not super sure. I feel like okay. I was in preparation for this episode, I was reflecting on how I improvise narrative, and I feel like I rarely have the great hit in mind, or like the epiphany. This is exactly what needs to happen at this moment for the story to go perfectly. I think I just tend to think in like capsules, or like at this stage in the story, like what do we not know about this world, or what do we not know about this character, or in what way does this character feel undeveloped, or I think I tend to do those things. And maybe I'm sort of this. So I guess, okay, in the hero's journey context, I might feel like we're in the ordinary world, and I feel like something isn't quite established. We don't know how the hero is interacting with another person in the ordinary world, or we don't really get a sense of their character, things like that. So I'll have another scene before I feel like, okay, maybe we can move on to the next stage. But I feel like I'm like super like I only think about like this one stage, and then I move on to the next. I only think about that stage. Like I have no like, oh, and then in the future we'll go to the next stage in this way.
Right. Well, you find the Tsuji, is it? For each of the stages. I'll throw a dichotomy at you, which is when you're thinking about narrative, do you find yourself more often thinking about like the plot things in the world that could happen, or like the characters and like what they should do? And obviously these are intertwined, but I guess like character versus, world or action.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I think actually doing Hero's Journey, the format, has helped me think more about what possible events could happen, or what possible things could, how could we potentially move to a different world, or things like that. But I think naturally what I do is very much character driven, very much like just in the scene driven even. Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's also like and this is like a new play leading in, but I have a tendency to like focus on, I don't know if it's metaphor or theme, or just like these bigger ideas that are running, maybe it's the character flaw or the character growth. Like that is what I'm really drives me into thinking about what another scene could possibly be. So I rarely have a good sense of how the entire story is going to happen in the sense of plot or scene by scene. Yeah.
Well, one thing that I think actually might be cueing Julian and I's different conceptions of this, I think, is also that Anna, you are not like a narrative player, in the sense of there are certain improvisers, particularly in our group, who come on to help shape the narrative and to function as narrative players. So like I will often, during someone else's scene near the end of the show, provide a burst of narration, enter as a side character or an object or some sort of crucial thing. I deliver some little bit of news. Julian, you do a lot of these kind of moves too, where we're coming on to do things to control the narrative. I don't think I've ever seen you do that, Anna. But you often make the right move within your, so it's not like you're meta, like in the terms of you can focus on the show, you can focus on your partner, or you can focus on yourself. Like you're definitely more in the realm of self and partner than in the realm of like trying to send the show in one direction or another, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think I come in our hero's journey shows, like I have come on stage with an idea about this will force the protagonist into the new world, I have done that a little bit, but I certainly have never gotten to the point of like big narration or like I have a strong sense of this is where the story should go. Like, I think you're right in that I exist sort of in scene, which is maybe why when Hal goes off on this like Anna's great at narrating, I'm like I have no real sense of that. I feel like I'm just it's a lot of instinct or just a lot of being in scene. But maybe that's an indication of how being in scene is in narrative are very much overlapped. It's not like if you're focusing on one, you can't also be doing the other.
Totally.
Yeah. I'm having a brain freeze moment, but there was something. But that kind of gets into the difference between. I mentioned that there are some people who do that. I felt like in our shows there were certain people who were thinking a lot about the arc of the show and were making sure that it was going to work out in an arc. And then there were certain people who weren't thinking at all about that, and that kind of functioned. If everyone had been thinking about that, then I think it would have maybe had more collisions. But what then always shocked me was when we got together to do story spines, some of the people who make all the right narrative choices in scene and like seem totally like just the people I look up to the most as improvisers would say things in our story spines that were like crazy. I was like, there's no way that that's the next scene. So this is kind of, I think this kind of breakdown will be useful for everyone, especially people in Sims or whatever, just to listen and kind of get into the mode of developing some, more opinions about where the show should go next. And this isn't like planning ahead. You're totally fine if it goes somewhere else, but like seeing the possible directions, I think, is a useful thing.
Yeah. And I think it's good here to emphasize the difference between like practice and performance in improv, where this is I think hopefully will be a useful tool for building your own sense of narrative and like bulking you up in a way that will be helpful. I don't know. I always have kind of athletic metaphors with improv, but I'll say it like this. Right. If you're practicing basketball, when you're doing basketball, you have to dribble. Like that's one of the rules that's continuously happening. But when you're practicing basketball, you might, for a long period, not dribble, do shooting drills and whatnot. This is, I think, lightening up on the like spontaneous and improv of it all to help build some skills in the narrative that hopefully you'll be able to pull out off of the dribble when you're actually doing improv.
Cool. All right, we should start because this might take a while. This could be the longest episode of Muprov Musings ever. I'm sorry if it is. Actually, I'm not. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of learning. Cool. You guys feeling ready?
Yeah.
Let's grab a genre for our show. Our options are fantasy, sci-fi, animal-based, magical, supernatural, abstract, and modern. In that, you
got that order in front of you?
Yeah, I got that order in front of me.
Let me throw you a number.
7. So options 1 to 7. Abstract is in there as our poison pill. If we pick abstract, we're in a deep hole, and you're about to learn something very weird about narrative. That's not what you would expect to learn.
Well, let's roll the dice.
All right.
5.
Oh, we were so close to the. That is supernatural.
Supernatural, involving ghosts, vampires,
which is funny because
all sorts of.
I don't think of supernatural as a super narrative-driven genre, even. Like a lot of times, the vibe is more texture-based of like this goofy like adventure. It doesn't need it to tie up or anything. So this is a funny example, but let's roll with it.
Yeah.
Punch with the rolls. Let's get a word.
The word from a randomwordgenerator.com is ear.
Ear. Awesome. So I think we're going to hit 3 possible opening scenes for ear. And what you're going to kind of try to get across are the big sort of core pieces of information, as if you just watched a scene and are now kind of letting us know what we like. Let's say your friend had just come on, like they just missed the scene and they're like, I need to join the show. And you're like, oh, well, there's some great texture where that person has awesome wings. that person has a worldview of this. In the scene, they mention their mother and that she's dead, and they also mention that there is a cactus growing out of their lawn or whatever. But it's sort of saying a little less summary than that. If you want, you can kind of put some story into it. But like, what happens? Who are the characters? What's going
on? So are each of us going to do one then?
Yeah.
Cool. Who will start?
You.
Okay. So the first scene in our supernatural show with the suggestion ear. Okay. I'm imagining a little yeah, and stop me if I'm doing this wrong, but I think we get to see a little child who is like a vampire boy. A little vampire child who has like his ear up on like a door and is
Zuji. That was literally what I was thinking. Not a vampire, but the same exact idea of a little child with their ear against a door. Wait, okay.
Okay, well, mind meld convergence.
There are some things that are objectively right.
And I know I'd still argue though that's not the objective truth.
No, I'm kidding. But
no, you're right though. That was the only right option. And yeah, I'm imagining that little vampire child hears his parents talking. And I'm imagining that his parents are maybe like fighting, and generally like it's not like a super fun home. And then after like hearing a little bit of that, the vampire boy might go and his name is Wilkes. Might go and play with some of his vampire toys and like talk to them a little bit sad.
Okay, Julian, I'm going to be a little hard on you.
Be hard.
I want you to like I want you to try to hit everything's subjective. I want you to try to hit some of the stuff that we've been talking about. So some of the worldview stuff, or maybe not. Maybe this is the first scene, but then the second scene we got to get a little bit of like what Wilkes believes in. But like, is there anything in the dialogue between the parents? Like, are they talking about Wilkes, or of like?
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Like, Wilkes is so shy, or whatever. Like, why can't Wilkes just, is there something that's going to tell us a little bit about this person's character? Because we do want to know that.
Yeah, this is a good hit. Yeah, I think the parents probably should, for all intents and purposes, mention something about Wilkes. I'm improv. First thing that comes to my mind is that Wilkes, like, they're saying that Wilkes is like a difficult son to have because he can't like keep his head out of the clouds. And I think that this goes with him like talking to his toys or whatever. Like he's a maybe like overly imaginative young boy in a way that makes it hard for him to kind of fit into the larger society.
Awesome. All right, Anna, you got one?
Yeah. Well, my thought was Frankenstein, which is that supernatural?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Frankenstein's supernatural.
Cool.
Supernatural.
So, okay. My thought is also maybe like a teenage young Frankenstein. We can detach the ear. So, he's got a bit of a mean streak. So the scene opens on this young Frankenstein. His name is Boxer. Like chucking his ear at these like the flying birds that have flying supernatural things. Maybe they're a little eerie. I don't know. There's something about the picture. They're transparent, so you can see the inside of their guts. And so he's chucking at these birds as like a common pastime for him. And I don't know, I didn't think that much further. I guess maybe he chucks his ear and one of the birds falls down and he's like seriously harmed the bird. And so he brings this home as his trophy.
Wait, and the bird is see-through or the ear is see-through?
No, the bird is it's supernatural bird. So
Okay.
that's a world. That's a texture, world building.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think in the sense you just said this is common for Boxer to do. You know, throwing his ear at birds just for fun.
All right. I'm going to push on you a little bit too. This is an improv scene. So
Yeah.
is this one character talking to themselves and throwing stuff at the birds and this being like just expressing everything, a solo scene?
Um, the birds can talk back. I think okay. So Boxer is a menace, right? Like he's known to the bird flock for being the one who keeps on checking his ear at them. So they're yelling like, "Why are you so mean? Why are you doing this?" Yeah.
I can see that scene starting a show. Of like the first person enters. I just love that is funny. I can see that happening in an improv show. Like, hey, why'd you throw your ear at me? My thought was similar to Julian's. I already mentioned for my scene. The main difference is that when I hear a supernatural show, my instinct is to start in the natural world. Like supernatural involves, to me, feels like it kind of there is natural and supernatural. So I was picturing a kid who was overhearing something. I love the thing about the parents talking about the kid. That wasn't what I was thinking. I think that's awesome. I was thinking overhearing some adults who are important, maybe they're the parents or maybe they're at the school or something, mentioning that something is kind of magically off, but you get two or like a tiniest snippet of that so that we don't have to like plan that or anything, just of the like, there is a disturbance and you hear it. And then the main thing is that the guardian comes in and is like, what are you doing listening? You're always listening to things that you shouldn't be. Like, you're too curious about this. Like, come back, you should be playing. And the kid is, they get into a little argument about that. And that's the main worldview thing.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna follow one of those things. And from now on, I think we're not fully gonna branch as much, but we might sometimes.
How do we pick the branch?
How do we pick the branch? Subjectively, right?
Yeah.
I will say, I think that Anna's is slightly in the realm of the sideways realm that we were talking about. Like, I don't think it's in the category of when you hear ear, the objectively right thing is young Frankenstein throwing his ear at a clear bird. That's one of those like where it might be the best possible show, but it certainly is not the most expected thing.
Yeah. Actually, I like Julian's. I also like yours.
I'm going to follow Julian's because I feel like I've already been too controlling.
Sure.
Although I like the concept.
Yeah, I honestly do really fuck with the crazy world where young Frankenstein is Boxer is throwing his ear at transparent birds. The stagecraft of it is kind of tough though.
I will say one of the other things is I think you're constantly making a choice between doing something that supports the narrative and doing something that supports the show as like a enjoyable, fun thing to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the joy of Anna's is like much more in the realm of like there's this bird that the audience will probably really enjoy and this like character stuff, where this is going to be like a lively, fun show. And the joy of Julian's is that like this kind of laying some groundwork for.
I think Julian's also has some maybe more grounded emotional resonance in terms of a kid overhearing his parents, which is already it punches you in the gut a little bit.
Yeah. So. But totally, this one's totally subjective. I don't care which one of these starts. I think you can start anyway.
Well, let's follow with mine.
All right, recap.
Wilkes is a young vampire boy who listened to his parents, who feel that he is overly imaginative, head in the clouds, and he likes to talk to his toys.
Sweet. All right. To you, Anna, what is scene 2? Or even just before you say what is scene 2, what are like the vibes of like you're tasked with thinking of this? How does your brain work in terms of like if you were going to say the 4 kind of reasonable things of like what are the branches you could shoot off of a scene after that?
Um, I think there's like you follow Wilkes to, Wilkes appears in the next scene, right? That's like one option. Probably Wilkes in a different environment than at home with his family. Maybe at vampire school or interacting with friends or, just a different group of people. Um, I think my mind is very like, they're not concrete scenes, right? They're more just like vibes. So maybe the second one, I feel like just totally shifting the emotional resonance of it and just going for something, ordinary world, like joyful maybe, or something maybe looks could or could not, may or may not be in it, but just like a very different joyful, like a lot of energy, a bustling energy, like a different setting to get a better sense of that world. Maybe meet a different character. Yeah, I think those are the main two things. I don't have four options.
Well, the following Wilkes is a big first one. I love the change the emotional tone, joyous. Would you want to follow Wilkes doing that, or would you want to just joyous celebration of other vampires?
I'm kind of in favor of just dropping, like leaving Wilkes in that scene. Wilkes will reappear probably, but like
let's drop Wilkes. Let's have this new young Frankenstein character come into.
All right, Julian. What are some other directions that you're thinking of when you hear this?
I had a general same concept of seeing, or I in particular, I thought it would be too sad if we did drop Wilkes. I do want to change the resonance, but I do want to keep it with Wilkes. One thing I thought was Wilkes could be with like a older kind of like, mentor type vampire in the village, and this like mentor is probably the mentor for something that's like a little bit out there, like painting or like boat building, some sort of like artisan craft maybe, and yeah, like maybe it is like painting, and we get a scene where they're like throwing paint at each other, and yeah, it's kind of a fun, delightful scene where Wilkes is able to like commiserate a little bit about what it's like at home, but I guess the mentor is like pointing out the more like positive part of Will's kind of head in the clouds lifestyle.
Yeah, I kind of agree that the next scene probably should have Wilkes. And my reasoning for that is, Wilkes is a kid. And usually when you're having an next scene not involve Wilkes, like that would be if you're trying to do a narrative show, or sorry, a protagonist narrative show like Hero's Journey, like it's some other kind of characters who are relevant to Wilkes. And it feels like those characters probably have to be adults if Wilkes is not going to be in the next scene. Maybe it's, just two other kid vampires who are talking and you're fleshing out the world of kid vampiring. But it does to me feel like, unless you're going to do some weird cutaway to like an instantaneous villain thing or like a prophecy or something really out there, I would probably follow. But I'm really interested in the joyous thing that Anna was saying, which you kind of hit on yours. But there was something about what Anna said that sounded like a crowded scene.
Yeah.
Of like a bustle.
Bustle. How could we hit a bustle?
Or like one thing that Anna was making me think of was like a vampire celebration. And this is another hard thing to do in improv, where in a movie you would have like a and then you'd sort of zoom in on Wilkes in the corner or whatever. But you can do that in improv too, where everyone bustles on, 2 or 3 snippets of dialogue from different places, and then you all turn your bodies out to send the focus into. But again, it would require a lot of coordination. Anna, have you come up with a happy one yet in the interim?
No, I've been staying in scene in the podcast. I've been listening to the conversation.
Okay. I'm going to take this one then. I'm going to take this one. I like the mentor idea, but I'm stoked on this party idea.
Yeah.
And party. I feel like it follows how I'm thinking about this is we've hit the worldview of, or like the Wilkes is too creative or whatever. I like the idea of a bustling, joyous vampire party where we're adding a lot of texture. And can you guys throw in some things that some of the vampires might say, like some opinions that some of them might have? Or like a deal they just closed, or like the equivalent of that, you know, like something they're celebrating.
I'm thinking Groundhog's Day. Like 2 more weeks of dull weather.
Yeah.
I don't know. My mind went to the blood trade. I don't know. That's some sort of like very humdrum, you know, business, like whatever business vampires do. Very much
Yeah, it could be both of those things. Like it could literally be like 2 snippets of like one, you know, like tiny little snippet on this side of the stage of someone being like, oh, 2 more weeks of bad weather. And on the other side of the stage, a tiny little snippet of like, I just closed a deal for 14 koalas. They have the best flavor or whatever. And then the point is all the adults are talking and Wilkes is trying to sort of get their attention. And there is a big like thing in the center that's like maybe some relevant to their ceremony, or like maybe it's full of blood. And I want to the course of the scene, Wilkes to knock it over, or like to be running around chasing some little dog, or like doing something that causes like the whole party to screech to a halt. And everyone to look at Wilkes and be like, what the? And this is not the inciting incident for the journey. This is another like worldview. You're getting in trouble a second time.
Yeah, he's always done that.
And so maybe the parent is like, really yells at him and we don't know. And then the scene cuts. Where are we going to next? And this is another one where the objective next is kind of narrower. If you want to follow the most basic step, but maybe the next thing you see is Wilkes at age 30 or something, and you're following slightly less. But Anna, it's your turn. You can do whatever the fuck you want.
So to recap, Wilkes just did something very public and very embarrassing.
Yeah, for creative purposes.
For creative,
or like something that, and we should actually name it specifically because this is the type of thing that arcs into Tsuji. So what's something specifically that Wilkes could have been trying to do while knocking over the blood?
I also say, like, I think what Julian originally said was heads in the clouds, or like it's too much in the, which is not quite. It's not quite like creative, you know. It's not quite the same.
Okay, so maybe then Wilkes misses it. Maybe Wilkes hits an age where you're supposed to be at some part in the ceremony, and Wilkes like somehow misses the vampire thing, and something. I still like the knocking over of something, but they're like, and now Wilkes, and Wilkes isn't there.
Yeah.
So you're asking what specifically the big problem?
Yeah, like what were they focused on? What like little detail of the room had fascinated Wilkes or caught their attention rather than the blood?
I was first image is fangs. The way the fangs, the ceremonial fangs lined up very, very neatly.
Yeah. Can it be dominoes? Can it be like they're fascinated by like the ceremonial fang, you know, and then it knocks, boom, like so they do some tiny thing and like the whole house falls down. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're fast. I was gonna say one fang is slightly tilted, and so they go to straighten it, and the whole thing.
Okay, I'm super into that. I'm with it. Objectively right. That's awesome. All right, Anna. So all the fangs have fallen down. Dominoes. You love dominoes, also. That's an Anna thing.
Oh, don't remind me of that show. Yeah.
And dominoes is such a cool thing that you can bring back in later. The dominoes. Okay, sorry. So the whole party falls down. The person gets mad if it, scene ends. What's next? Oh, we're at 45 minutes. Oh my God, this podcast is going over. It's okay. It's worth it. Anna, what's next?
My immediate thought is like big punishment awaits. Like got reprimanded by his parents, but there are bigger consequences for disrupting a huge ceremony. So we see Wilkes at night alone, like dreading whatever the council is going to decree. And so he's like alone at home, like very somber, and he can't sleep, and so he decides to, I don't know, leave the house and prop around or something.
And this is the same improv thing of like, I mean, I know a new play we started a lot of scenes alone, but so improviser enters the stage alone, and then how does that show to the audience that they're like, I guess they can just sort of be restless, or is this person talking is one of the main things?
Yeah, for the sake of improv, I think they would be worried, but I think that maybe so once they leave, they'll meet someone immediately, or meet some creature as soon as they leave the house.
Mm-hmm. So when they're talking to themselves to leave the house, are they saying like, I'm running away for good? Or are they saying like, I'm just worried here, so I'm going to leave? Or like, what are they saying to themselves?
More just like, okay, maybe like, I don't fit in. Like, I don't feel like I fit in here. I can't even be an audience member in this ceremony without disrupting it. Like, what am I doing here? So maybe what the creature they meet is, my brain is stuck on like transparent birds. Put them in. The transparent bird that witnessed the entire thing and the entire embarrassment, and it's like I don't know, like maybe speaks exactly what Wilkes is worried about. Like, you don't fit in here, do you, or something like that's your question.
Yeah, I think it would be funny for this bird to be like very kind of mean, or like like, you are a sore thumb here, buddy. It just, nonchalantly pointing out like this thing that is super deep and like, hurtful to Wilkes.
Yeah, maybe like the first thing is like, can you keep it quiet? Like,
yeah.
And cool. So if this bird is going to be the sort of herald or the call to adventure, which it seems like it is, we need a little more from the bird than like that's the texture of what the scene is starting. But where does that go? Does the bird know something? Is it relevant to the world in some way? Or?
I think the bird is traveling somewhere for winter or summer or whatever time scale birds travel on. You seem like you have an idea for where the bird is traveling.
No, I don't have an idea for I have an idea for bird worldview. Okay. Which is from your traveling somewhere, like, winter, summer, when things get bad, you get out of Dodge. Is the bird worldview. Yeah. It's like, I was just coming from somewhere that was cold and now I'm going somewhere warm. Like if you're cold here, you leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the bird should say somewhere that sounds just like beautiful, like paradise or something. Like the, what is there the fairies cove or like somewhere where it's like a beautiful supernatural creature, and it's like a beach or it's like a meadow or something, and that's where the bird is headed.
And it's super not vampire, right? Vampires can't do sunlight.
Oh, right.
No, but that's awesome. That's awesome for the narrative of like we're
I think this bird should be in the clouds, because that's where in the clouds, because that's where Wilkes' head is.
The clouds.
Oh, yeah, that's such an Anna thing.
Yeah, no, but that's sick.
Yeah, Wilkes' head is in the clouds. Get your head out of the clouds. I'm going up to the clouds.
And we didn't do really like refusal of the call too much, but I think we should have a refusal of the call here. Where I don't think at this point in this scene Wilkes is ready to grab onto the bird's talons and fly away.
And so maybe if we're gonna refuse the call, I think the bird should say, well, I'm sticking around here for however long, but
once I get my berries, I'm out of here. And maybe Wilkes then gets gets risk of punishment.
There's a scene in which, maybe this is where Julian is going, like Wilkes is on the step of meeting the council where the punishment will be told, or something where he makes the decision. Like when the danger punisher is very, very close, he makes a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, here's people walking out of the counselor room like, I just got 13 years readjusting the stalagmites on our cave or something.
My one thing is rather than a punishment in terms of like adjusting stalagmites, because Wilkes is a kid, my instinct is that they should be doing something the equivalent of like sending you to military school or something where the intention is that the kid will learn from like, this kid's not tough enough. They need to go to the bat cave or whatever, wherever.
Yeah,
but like whatever thing.
A real vampire, right?
Yeah, real vampires. So what's something like that could be the punishment that's impending? But
should it be the bat cave? The bat cave, where you have to spend like a whole year as a bat, in your bat form to
really be wild. Oh, and that also gives you a vehicle for entering into the sky.
Yeah.
Be a bat, turn to bat.
Be a bat. Animal-based is the based genre. This is almost not a supernatural show. I'm just going to throw it out there. They are vampires, but
I think it'll come in the test allies
world yet, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they have to be a bat for a year.
Yeah, be a bat in the bat cave.
And is this a good scene, or is this just like this is one of those improv scenes where it's like I've decided you must be a bat, and then it ends? Or is there like is the mom telling them, or it
can be a good scene if we want the bat counselor to be a villain of some sort, and the bat counselor is like played in a like charismatic, intimidating way, or any sort of big way. Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming there's a bat counselor if we're talking, or I guess it would be a council of vampires. But yeah, we can optionally have the chairman of the bat council be. Yeah.
This seems like a kind of running away style story where there might be at least to me, instinctually, this seems like there would be a chasing antagonist. So I think it would be good to hit a character who is either responsible for guarding them in the Batcave, or is the person who sent it, like someone who has a high incentive to go chase this person down and bring them back. Who could that be, and what could their vibe be?
It could be what you're doing the thing with the Bat counselor. There's also a scenario in which, like, the refusal of the call goes a little longer, and so Wilkes ends up at the back, or like there's some sort of whatever the military, whoever the instructor there is like supposed to make sure you stay in the Batcave. And so like maybe the escape happens at the Batcave instead. I don't know.
Well, I like that artistically. I think it would be fun for our transparent bird to, hit a, hey kid, while Wilkes is in the Batcave. But for improv's sake and for podcast sake, I think we should get to the meat.
Okay. So let's just say real quick, Wilkes goes to Batcave, it's bad there. Some stuff happens. Maybe that, it's a kind of test ally. It's a scene. Yeah. And then Bird is, hey kid, you're not happy just hanging upside down every day, or what's a repetitive thing they could have to do all the time there?
Well, I like hanging upside down.
Yeah, or like partying or whatever. I don't know. Cool. Sweet. So, hey kid, and it just goes with them. There's no like bigger incident or something. I'm going to bring up ears again, because we did start by listening to a conversation, and bats have like, echolocation and crazy good hearing. Is there anything that they could hear in the Batcave that could?
I think it would just certainly be fun to have them hear something. Just as wonderful fodder for us later. Like they hear a lot of rumbles, or they hear a group of people or something that we can just define later.
Oh, fun. So maybe they're just scared, and that's part of why they leave, or he leaves.
Yeah. Maybe they all decide to curl up in the inner heart of the cave once they hear this thing. And Wilkes does not do that because Wilkes is different.
Okay. So Wilkes follows a crow. I don't feel like this is the objectively right thing, but I think we should keep going for time's sake. I think that there's a better way to exit the cave.
Yeah.
But, or at the very least, what's a threshold? Like what's a physical threshold that could be in this cave? Either like going into the heart of it or going out of it, or somewhere where
what if it's a thunderstorm going on outside and the bird is taking refuge in the cave and Wilkes is like, no, like, let's go, like now, like I gotta leave here. And it's, through the thunder and rain.
All right. So we assume something really bad happened there to make Wilkes want to leave, but we're getting on there. Unless Anna, do you have the thing?
No, I feel like you would take a couple tries.
Into the storm.
Into the storm. And Anna, you have to name the bird. Anna, you have to name the bird right now. The first name that you say.
Worm.
Worm.
Yes. Pause. So we recorded the whole episode, but it's too long. So I think we're just going to cut it off here and you'll just never know what happened at the end.
We're going to end it like that?
No, we can't.
No, how? What do you mean we have to end the episode right now and they can't hear more about what's going to happen?
They can hear more, but there's this pacing thing, right? Where you have to have a sort of cliffhanger moment where if you listened to it all in a row, it's going to sound terrible. So what we're going to do is we're ending the episode here.
But we're ending it, but then we're not going to ever be able to find out more about what happened to Worm and
This is the lowest point you're never going to be able to find out ever again. There's no way out, Julian, unless you can think of it. Anna?
No, there's no way out. We're screwed.
We should just give up.
We should just.
Yeah.
Hey, wait, Anna. It's me, Worm. From the episode. I'm real. That's why you've been so into transparent birds. I'm real. And listen to me. These two bozos don't know shit about how to run a podcast. But if you just told them to split the episode into 2 parts, then the viewers and you could hear more about what happened.
That's brilliant. Worm the transparent bird. Get out of my mind.
What are you talking about, Anna? The episode's over.
Yeah, listen. No way. There's no idea. It's Tasuji ending right here.
No.
Listen. What if we just split it in 2? That way, the listeners can listen to the first part, only an hour. Then they're stuck on this amazing cliffhanger about what happened to Wilkes and Worm, and they'll want to listen to part 2. Naturally, they would never, ever not listen to part 2.
Well, then I guess this has been
Muprov. And find out how that ends on the next episode.
My sign off is that I just started an improv class in NY. I'm not going to mention what improv class I started, but I picked one that I thought would be able to teach me some skills that I felt like I didn't have as much. I do feel like it's teaching those skills, but it's funny because it also is teaching an introduction to narrative. And because it's people's first time, the way that they're doing it is the exact opposite of what we did in this episode, which is they're literally telling us what happens in every scene.
Wait, what? How's that different?
Like, how? Oh, I see. Like, ours is so vibe based. Like, you can throw in things wherever you want and take twists and turns. But like, this is like the first scene will be this will happen, and the second scene this will happen between these characters. In the third scene, we'll introduce 3 new characters who are goofy. And in the fourth scene,
sure.
like that kind of thing, which is just a funny concept to me. But what it made me realize is also just sort of being around people in New York. The thing that, or just being around people in classes really is one thing. But it almost, the way that I have learned improv is something that's totally instinctual, right? And some of it is conceptual, but it's very much just like, and a lot of this stuff here is gamier. Like there's a thing you're supposed to be doing in the scene and things are getting out quickly. And it almost feels to me like I've entered like into a place where I was reminded of like being someone who like speaks English, like going to take an English class or something, where it's like there are all these grammar rules that I don't know. And then I realized also like when I watch shows, a lot of times it feels like I'm either like, a French person going to Quebec or something, where it's like, what the heck is going on? Or like just being in an environment where a lot of people improv is their second language, or especially narrative improv is their second language. And they talk in a very specific way and if I'm, using slang and stuff like that, then people are like a little more stressed out. But it's funny with Anna, because I feel like this narrative Muprov thing that we're doing is Anna's like first language. And that's part of why I love to, I don't know. That was the thought that I had before this episode. I don't know if you guys have any feelings about it.
I vibe with everything you're saying. And I think it's a wonderful analogy for how it feels.
I have yet to improvise with someone I think who like is just starting to learn long form and has done short form for like the majority of their life. So I have yet to experience that.
Yeah, you're gonna see
what it's like.
It's a totally
you really
different...
are.
or just even like interact with someone who's gone through one of these schools where they teach you like in a very specific, in a more rote way rather than like a progressive way. Like we set you guys doing stuff right away, and some of it's heinous, but like it's kind of more trial and error rather than like a gentler like here's the things to do. And just a different way of teaching. Whereas ours leads to some questionable results in the very beginning, but ultimately you get your wings, because we weren't taught in classes. Most of what we did was figuring it out as a group, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's a different thing too.
Tinkering. It's a method of learning. You tinker.
Yeah, tinkering. Like I keep on meeting different people in New York who all have the same technology because they got it from the same place.
And the episode is fading out right now, right? It already did fade out, or
yeah, sure. It's gone.
Love you.
It's already gone.
That's exactly what I said. I'm sheepish. And I want them to hear. No, but yeah, wait, that's so, also, I mean, I'm going to stop my recording now. Yeah, that's such a thing. I was thinking about how Simps didn't really have coaches in the way when we've been in it that like it used to. And I think that that's totally part of it, is like us figuring out together and like grinding through it together shapes some of the way that we do it. And probably does make it feel less like rote, because there's no authority who can tell us the right way to do it necessarily. I mean, we have like gradients of it with like older members of the group or like ADs and stuff, but it is more exploratory.
Yeah, I talked to a group about how they practice, and I was like shocked when they said it. It makes total sense. But they do a show once a month, and I was like, okay, like how do you guys practice? And they're like, oh, in practice they just practice their show.
Like they don't learn skills?
Like most of what they either learn skills or they run the show. But it's not like, ours is always there's some agenda, like something's cooking, whereas this is more of like a stable practice, if that makes sense. Where you're like improving on the thing steadily over time, but it's not like there's an arc the same way that our practices have.
Like each practice has like you could ace it on the first practice maybe? Is one of the things there?
Maybe, or like it sounds like you kind of go in, you do a warm up, you practice like, oh, here are the skills we have. That like, let's practice doing this kind of song. Let's practice doing this kind of song. Let's practice doing this song and a song. Let's do a run. That kind of thing, where you're literally just practicing the skills rather than like, all right, welcome to practice. I've cooked up something that we're gonna try to like understand.
Yeah.
And
Well, it kind of sounds like a tighter ship, at least. But you know, tighter ships never go through rocky coves that we love.
Oh, can't you see me now? Can't you see me now? Like you did back then. Can't you see me now? I remember way back when. Oh, and times they are changing. You know, things are rearranging. Can't you see me now? Can't you see me now? Everything is changing. Can't you see me now? Can't you see me